In the far reaches of the Orion Arm, on a planet named Theraxis, an echo of desperation rang through the stars. Theraxis was a world known for its peace-loving people, the Theraxians, whose society was built on diplomacy, trade, and a reverence for the beauty of their home planet. Vast fields of iridescent plants stretched across their continents, bioluminescent forests glowed in the twilight, and crystalline cities rose elegantly, untouched by the scars of war. For generations, Theraxis had lived in harmony, isolated from the conflicts that plagued the galaxy. But on that fateful day, their serenity was shattered. The attack came suddenly, a fleet descending from the darkness of space like silent predators. These invaders were known as the Skarn, a war-hardened species infamous for their brutal conquest strategies. They were insectoid in nature, with a hive-like efficiency, cold-blooded precision, and advanced technology built not to merely conquer but to subjugate. For the Skarn, planets were merely resources waiting to be harvested, and people were commodities to be enslaved. In moments, Theraxis's atmosphere lit up with the glow of incoming enemy ships. Sirens wailed, and the Theraxian High Council struggled to comprehend the scale of the assault. They had no true defenses, no army, and no experience with war. Their communication grids were soon overwhelmed by the chaos, as messages flooded in from terrified civilians and city leaders. Massive beams of energy fired from Skarn warships, obliterating anything in their path. The Theraxian cities, once shimmering pillars of peace, now lay in ruins, reduced to ash and rubble. In the capital city of Ithara, the Theraxian leader, First Speaker Lyrae, broadcasted a final, desperate message to her people. This is First Speaker Lyrae. We are facing a crisis like none we've ever known. To any who hear us, may the stars show mercy. She choked back her own despair as she sent out the last beacon of hope, a deep space distress signal. It would travel far, reaching across the void of space, carrying her people's desperate plea for salvation. But as the Skarn's siege intensified, the Theraxians feared their message would vanish into the emptiness, unheard and unanswered. The distress call raced through the galaxy, its signal crossing light years in moments, carrying with it the haunting echo of Theraxis's downfall. And as fate would have it, this signal finally reached the one place where it might find an answer: Earth. Deep within Earth's military network, alarms blared as the signal was decoded and processed. The words of First Speaker Lyrae played in a tense silence in Earth's galactic command center, where a team of high-ranking officials and strategists gathered. One of those present was Admiral Steele, an experienced leader who had overseen Earth's most critical battles. He listened to the message with a deep frown etched into his face. Earth's presence in the galaxy was still controversial, and many saw humanity as newcomers. To intervene could spark political backlash among other species, and Earth's resources, though formidable, were stretched thin. But the image of Theraxis's destruction played over and over on the screens, and Steele knew this was more than a political dilemma. At his side stood Commander Ash Voss, a decorated officer with years of service, known for her unwavering resolve and tactical brilliance. She watched the recording of the devastation on Theraxis, her jaw clenched. Voss led the Deadliest Response Unit, a team specifically trained to handle the galaxy's worst crises. Called in only for the most dangerous missions, they were known by many names across the galaxy. Some called them the Ghosts, others the Reapers. But one thing was clear: they were humanity's last resort. The decision to mobilize the Deadliest Response Unit wasn't taken lightly. Steele knew the implications. Sending in this team was Earth's way of making a statement. "We're risking a lot by getting involved in this," Steele said, his voice carrying the weight of years of experience. Voss nodded but spoke without hesitation. "If we don't answer, the galaxy will know we turned our backs on those who needed us. The Theraxians aren't warriors. They're defenseless. If we leave them to the Skarn, we might as well abandon what makes us human." Her words were strong, unyielding, and they resonated with everyone in the room. Steele regarded her for a long moment before nodding. "Prepare the team. They'll need to know what they're up against," he said. Voss turned on her heel, her mind already racing with tactical possibilities. The Deadliest Response Unit would need a strategy, and fast. As she walked through the command center, she began assembling the team, each member a highly trained operative known for their skills and adaptability. First was Lucan Ghost Reyes, a master of stealth and infiltration. No one could disappear or blend into hostile environments quite like Ghost. Tala Blaze Kellen, the team's explosives expert, was next. Blaze was as fiery as her nickname suggested, and her tactical genius with explosives was unmatched. Finally, there was Rico Grim Novak, a heavy weapons specialist with the raw strength and determination to hold off even the deadliest alien adversaries. With the team assembled, Voss addressed them. "We're heading to Theraxis," she began, her tone somber. "The Skarn have begun their attack, and the Theraxians don't have the means to fight back. Earth isn't officially aligned with Theraxis, but we've received their distress signal, and you know what that means." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. They understood the unspoken truth. They were the last hope for Theraxis. Intel on the Skarn suggests they're a formidable force, but they're underestimating what we can do. Our mission is to infiltrate, disrupt, and ultimately cripple their operations on the ground. We'll be outnumbered, but we've got one advantage they don't: surprise. She looked at each member, her confidence unwavering. "This is what we trained for. We're not here to win a war. We're here to show the Skarn what happens when you prey on the defenseless." They boarded their ship, the Harbinger, an advanced stealth vessel equipped for high-risk missions. As they left Earth's orbit, Voss briefed the team on their approach. The Skarn would expect a standard military response, not a surgical infiltration led by operatives with skills honed in the galaxy's most dangerous environments. Each team member prepared their gear, knowing the mission ahead would test every ounce of their resolve. As the Harbinger slipped into hyperspace, the team settled into the quiet focus that only came before a mission. Theraxis awaited, a peaceful world under siege, and the Deadliest Response Unit was its only hope. Voss closed her eyes briefly, her mind aligning with the gravity of their mission. They were headed to a world on the brink of annihilation, but humanity had answered the call. The galaxy might have doubted them, but soon enough, the Skarn would know what it meant to face the deadliest humans Earth had to offer. The Harbinger emerged from hyperspace on the outskirts of the Theraxis system, its sleek form almost invisible against the dark void of space. Commander Voss and her team gathered around the holographic display in the central command bay, reviewing the latest intelligence data. The display flickered to life, showing Theraxis in real time, a beautiful blue-green orb marred by the scars of the Skarn invasion. Plumes of smoke rose from the planet's surface, and flashes of destruction could be seen even from space. "Status report," Voss demanded, her eyes scanning the screen for any signs of change. Reyes, nicknamed Ghost, typed quickly, bringing up the detailed scan of the surrounding area. "Skarn ships are patrolling in orbit. They're heavy on defensive positions, likely expecting any fleet to try to punch through here." Blaze, the team's explosives expert, watched with a mix of disdain and determination. "They're ready for a frontal assault, but they have no idea what's actually coming." She tapped her belt, stocked with her custom-made explosives. Voss nodded. "They'll be focused on the skies. If we play this right, we won't need to engage them directly until we're already on the ground. We'll use the Harbinger's cloaking tech to slip through their patrols. Ghost, you're up first. Once we're planet-side, you'll take the lead on recon." The rest of the team gathered their equipment, each of them knowing that stealth would be critical. The Harbinger glided silently past the orbiting Skarn fleet, its cloaking technology holding as they slipped through the enemy's security net. They held their breaths, watching Skarn ships glide by only hundreds of meters away, massive and foreboding, their exteriors bristling with alien weaponry. Finally, with a sigh of relief, they entered the atmosphere. As they broke through the clouds, the devastation became all too real. Vast tracts of Theraxis had been reduced to smoking wastelands. Crystalline cities lay in ruin, their beauty shattered under the Skarn's brutal assault. The forests, once bioluminescent beacons of Theraxian culture, were now scorched and blackened. "Unbelievable," Grimm murmured, his voice tinged with anger as he took in the sight from the cockpit. Voss remained silent, her focus narrowing on their immediate objective. She activated the comms. "Team, we're heading into hostile territory. We've pinpointed a location near one of the remaining strongholds where Theraxian survivors are being held. The Skarn have set up multiple holding zones, and intel suggests they're using the captives for labor, dismantling the Theraxian cities for resources." Blaze shook her head. "They're dismantling Theraxis itself. It's a dead world to them, just another stop in their endless campaign. They're parasites," Voss replied coldly, "and it's time to burn them out." The Harbinger landed undetected in a secluded region on the outskirts of Ethera, the capital city. Once a gleaming beacon of Theraxian life, it now resembled a ghost city, its structures reduced to jagged, lifeless forms against a smoky sky. The team moved swiftly, donning their advanced suits and engaging their cloaking capabilities. The suits' adaptive camouflage would allow them to blend seamlessly into the ruined environment, making them nearly invisible to the naked eye. Ghost took the lead, slipping through the shadows with practiced ease. The rest followed in a tight formation, each step calculated and silent. They moved toward the holding zone, a temporary Skarn encampment surrounded by hastily erected walls made from scavenged Theraxian materials. Skarn soldiers patrolled the perimeter, their insectoid exoskeletons glinting under the waning light of Theraxis' two suns. They reached a vantage point overlooking the camp, and Ghost activated a small drone that hovered soundlessly above them, transmitting a live feed to their visors. The view was grim. Captured Theraxians huddled together in the open, surrounded by Skarn guards. The prisoners wore expressions of despair, and even from a distance it was clear many were wounded or weakened. "Looks like they're using them for hard labor," Ghost murmured. "They've got them breaking down their own city, harvesting crystals and metals." Grim clenched his fists. Slaughtering them would be bad enough. Making them dismantle their own home, that's something else. Voss took a deep breath, her face set in a determined expression. "This is what we came for. Our mission is to liberate these people and disrupt Skarn operations. We'll hit them hard, fast, and leave nothing standing. Blaze, I want charges set at their power nodes. Ghost, get eyes on the Skarn commander. And Grim, you're with me." Blaze smirked. "Been waiting to blow something up since we landed." They split into pairs, each with their assignments. Blaze moved through the rubble, planting her explosives at strategic locations around the Skarn encampment. Her explosive devices, crafted to blend in with any terrain, were nearly impossible to detect. Meanwhile, Ghost slinked through the shadows toward the Skarn command center, a tent reinforced with alien materials and surrounded by armed guards. Inside, a lone Skarn commander reviewed tactical displays, its alien eyes glowing faintly as it surveyed the camp. "Target in sight," Ghost whispered over the comms. "Awaiting orders." "Hold position," Voss replied. "We'll initiate the attack once Blaze has the charges set." As Blaze worked, Grim and Voss quietly approached the outer perimeter, weapons ready. Grim's gaze remained hard and focused, his fingers flexing around the grip of his rifle. Voss knew Grim's personal history, the loss of his family to raiders on a distant human colony. This mission meant more to him than just orders. It was a chance to save people the way no one had been able to save his own family. "All charges set," Blaze's voice crackled over the comm. "Ready when you are," Voss signaled to the team, her voice low but resolute. "Engage." With a synchronized movement, the team launched their attack. Blaze's explosives detonated first, a series of controlled explosions that plunged the Skarn camp into chaos. Power nodes erupted in flames, and lights across the compound flickered out, leaving the encampment shrouded in darkness. The Skarn guards scrambled, their exoskeletons clattering as they attempted to regroup in the confusion. Using the cover of darkness, Grim and Voss surged forward, their weapons aimed and ready. Grim took down two Skarn soldiers with precise shots, while Voss disabled a third with a well-placed energy burst. The Theraxians, seeing their captors in disarray, began to stir, their expressions shifting from despair to cautious hope. In the command center, Ghost eliminated the Skarn commander with a silent, swift strike, ensuring there would be no organized resistance from within. He then activated his comm, his voice calm but urgent. "Commander's down. Skarn forces are in disarray, but we need to move fast. Reinforcements won't be far behind." Voss turned to the Theraxians, motioning for them to follow. "We're here to help. Stay low and follow us. We're getting you out of here." As they guided the freed Theraxians through the debris, Blaze held the rear, setting more charges to cover their escape. They navigated through the remains of Ithara, the familiar glow of the bioluminescent forest in the distance guiding their way back to the Harbinger. Once the survivors were safely aboard the ship, Voss and her team prepared to leave, but not before Blaze activated the final charges. The Skarn camp erupted in a brilliant display of fire and light, the last remnants of their occupation obliterated. The Harbinger lifted off, carrying with it the survivors and the Deadliest Response Unit, each of them knowing this was only the beginning. The Skarn would soon realize what they were up against, but for now, humanity had struck its first blow, and Theraxis had its first glimmer of hope. Back aboard the Harbinger, the atmosphere was tense yet triumphant, as Commander Voss and her team gathered around the command console to debrief. The Theraxian survivors, many of them weary and wounded, had been given shelter in the ship's medbay, and their faces, marked by exhaustion and the trauma of captivity, served as a stark reminder of the stakes. Voss knew this mission was far from over. The Skarn would regroup, and their counterattack was inevitable. Grim leaned against the wall, his expression dark. That was only a small part of the Skarn forces down there. They'll be mobilizing their main units once they realize what we've done. Voss nodded. We've bought ourselves a small window, but that's all. Our mission isn't just to free survivors. It's to disrupt the Skarn occupation. If we want to cripple their operations on Theraxis, we'll need to hit their supply lines and command posts hard. Ghost tapped into the main display, his fingers gliding over the interface. I've pinpointed several strategic targets based on what we saw on the ground and from the information the survivors shared. There's a major supply hub about 20 clicks east of Ithera. It's where they're consolidating all their resources, including Theraxian artifacts they're scavenging. Blaze's eyes glinted with excitement as she studied the map. A stockpile that size would make one impressive explosion. Precisely, Voss replied. But there's something else. She motioned for Ghost to enhance the image on the display. This hub is connected to their main communications relay. If we can infiltrate the site and hack into their relay, we'll have direct access to their operational data. We'll know every move they plan to make. The team exchanged a look, each of them grasping the magnitude of the task ahead. This wasn't just a matter of freeing prisoners anymore. It was about throwing a wrench in the Skarn's entire occupation strategy, giving the people of Theraxis a fighting chance. "Commander," Reyes began, breaking the silence, "the Skarn won't just sit around waiting for us to sabotage their operations. If we go for the supply hub, we're going to encounter heavy resistance. They'll have reinforcements pouring in the moment they detect us. That's where timing comes in," Voss replied with a sharp glint in her eye. "Ghost, Blaze, you two are our best stealth operators. You'll infiltrate the supply hub ahead of us and set the groundwork. If you can disable key security systems, the rest of us can move in with minimal detection. This will be a precise operation, quick, quiet, and no loose ends." Grim cracked his knuckles. "Sounds like my kind of fight." They readied their gear and prepared for the drop. As the Harbinger approached the target zone under the cover of darkness, Voss felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. The Theraxian survivors were counting on them, and she couldn't afford any mistakes. The consequences of failure were too great, not just for her team but for the planet below, still reeling from the devastation of invasion. Ghost and Blaze were the first to descend, their figures disappearing into the night as they activated their cloaking tech. They navigated the rough terrain with practiced precision, slipping past Skarn patrols as they closed in on the supply hub. The facility was a sprawling network of storage buildings, barricades and loading zones, bustling with Skarn activity even in the dead of night. From their vantage point, Ghost scanned the compound through his scope, observing the movement patterns of the Skarn guards. They're heavily fortified with automated turrets on each corner. Entry won't be easy, Blaze smirked. "That's why I'm here." She pulled out a small device, a jammer she'd modified specifically for Skarn tech, and set it up in the shadows. The device emitted a low-frequency pulse, temporarily disabling the turret's targeting systems. With the outer defenses weakened, they slipped into the heart of the supply hub, moving like shadows as they bypassed security checkpoints and avoided detection. They reached the central command node, a pulsating mass of alien technology that acted as the brain of the supply hub's defenses and communications relay. "Plugging in now," Ghost whispered, attaching a secure link between his wrist computer and the node. Lines of Skarn code flickered across his screen as he bypassed the encryption, navigating through layers of alien firewalls with calculated ease. "Got it," he finally said. "I've disabled the local alarms and we're in their network. You should have an open path, Commander." Back on the Harbinger, Voss nodded as she reviewed the live feed Ghost had patched into her console. "All right, team. Move in. Ghost, Blaze, regroup with us once you're clear." The rest of the team descended from the Harbinger, moving with purpose toward the now vulnerable compound. They encountered minimal resistance at the perimeter, thanks to Ghost and Blaze's sabotage, and slipped inside undetected. Within moments, they reached the heart of the supply hub, a massive warehouse filled with crates of resources, supplies, and ancient Theraxian artifacts. Voss gestured to Blaze. "Set charges on key points. We're leaving nothing for the Skarn to reclaim." Blaze moved through the stacks of crates, planting her explosives with practiced efficiency. Meanwhile, Grim and Reyes covered the exits, taking out any Skarn soldiers who wandered too close. Ghost continued to monitor their surroundings, providing updates on enemy movements through their earpieces. As Blaze finished setting the last of her charges, Ghost's voice crackled through the comm. "Heads up, team. I've got Skarn reinforcements heading our way. Looks like they've realized something's off. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they reach the hub." "Understood," Voss replied, her voice calm despite the mounting tension. Everyone converge on the exit, we're moving out. They retraced their steps through the compound, maintaining formation as they weaved through the labyrinthine hallways. Just as they reached the outer perimeter, the first Skarn soldiers arrived, their insectoid forms skittering across the ground in pursuit. Grim turned, his rifle trained on the advancing Skarn. "Time to say goodbye," he muttered, unleashing a hail of gunfire that cut through the nearest enemies, buying the team precious seconds. Once they cleared the compound, Voss signaled Blaze, "Detonate the charges." Blaze grinned and pressed the trigger. Explosions erupted within the supply hub, lighting up the night as the warehouse and its contents were obliterated. Fires roared, and Skarn soldiers scrambled in confusion, their communications jammed and their supply lines decimated. The team regrouped at a safe distance, watching as the once formidable Skarn outpost crumbled in a series of violent detonations. The shockwave rippled through the ground, and for a brief moment there was silence as they all took in the sight of their victory. But their respite was short-lived. Ghost's warning came through the comm, his voice taut with urgency. "We've got incoming. 3 Skarn gunships on approach, and they're armed for heavy assault." Voss gritted her teeth. "Everyone fall back to the extraction point. We can't take them on from here." They sprinted through the forest, dodging debris and leaping over fallen branches as the roar of the approaching gunships grew louder. They could see the gunships' searchlights slicing through the night, sweeping over the terrain in search of their targets. As they neared the clearing where the Harbinger was hidden, the first shots rang out, bolts of searing energy cutting through the trees. Blaze narrowly dodged a blast that took out a tree mere feet away, her pace never slowing. "We're almost there," she shouted. The team reached the Harbinger, and Voss wasted no time. "Everyone aboard, now!" Once inside, Voss took the helm, firing up the engines as the Harbinger lifted off. The gunships closed in, unleashing a barrage of firepower, but Voss maneuvered the Harbinger with skill, evading each blast. "Blaze, give them a parting gift," Voss commanded. Blaze fired the ship's rear cannons, launching a salvo that struck one of the gunships, sending it spiraling to the ground in a fiery explosion. The remaining 2 backed off, and the Harbinger rocketed away, leaving the Skarn forces behind. As they breached the atmosphere, Voss turned to her team, pride evident in her gaze. "We hit them where it hurt. They won't forget this." They had accomplished their mission with precision, but they all knew it wouldn't end here. The Skarn were relentless, and this battle was only the beginning of a larger war. Back on the Harbinger, the crew worked quickly, patching up minor injuries and assessing the results of their latest strike. Though they dealt a major blow to the Skarn, Voss knew it was only a matter of time before the enemy regrouped. With their primary supply hub destroyed, the Skarn would be desperate, possibly reckless, a dangerous combination for everyone on Theraxis. As the crew settled into a temporary reprieve, Ghost received a signal on his console, his face twisted with curiosity as he studied the transmission. "Commander, we're getting a hail from a source calling themselves the Theraxian Council." Voss looked up sharply, surprised. "Put it through. Let's see what they want." The holoprojector flickered to life, revealing a group of dignified but wary Theraxians, their expressions a mix of awe, gratitude, and apprehension. At the center was a regal figure, adorned with delicate, shimmering symbols across her face, a cultural sign of her authority. Her eyes reflected wisdom, but also the scars of recent suffering. "I am Counselor Lyra, representing what remains of the Theraxian High Council," she said, her voice steady but layered with weariness. "To the crew of the Harbinger, we owe you our thanks for striking at the heart of our oppressors. Our people have seen the devastation you've wrought upon the Skarn, and it has brought us hope where there was none." Voss inclined her head respectfully. "Counselor Lyra, we're honored to assist, but I won't lie to you. We're here to make an impact, and we're willing to go to great lengths to drive the Skarn out of Theraxis." Lyra's gaze softened. "That is precisely why we are contacting you. While we have no army, the Theraxian people possess knowledge, our understanding of the terrain, hidden pathways, and natural defenses that may give you an advantage. We wish to join forces, for I believe your fight is now our fight." Blaze's face lit up at the prospect. "An underground resistance network, right here on Theraxis? That could turn the tide." Voss nodded, considering the possibilities. "Counselor, with your knowledge and our firepower, we might just stand a chance at weakening their foothold, but we'll need to act quickly. The Skarn will retaliate hard after losing their supply hub." Lyra's voice grew firm. "We have fighters, Commander Voss. Not soldiers, but civilians willing to resist and knowledgeable in our ways. All they need is guidance and weapons. We can supply those," Voss replied, meeting the counselor's gaze. Coordinate with us and we'll get those resources into the right hands. Lyra's eyes brightened with hope. Then let us waste no time, Commander. Together, we may reclaim our world. The communication ended, and Voss turned to her crew, a spark of newfound determination lighting up her face. This changes everything. We're no longer fighting this alone. We'll work with the Theraxians to create a coordinated resistance movement, and with any luck, we'll weaken the Skarn's hold from the inside. The team gathered around, discussing strategies, logistics, and how best to arm the Theraxian rebels. Ghost brought up topographical maps of Theraxis, revealing key areas where the Skarn were vulnerable due to the unique features of the terrain: ancient caverns, dense jungles, and sheer rock faces that hindered large-scale movement. Blaze's eyes scanned the map with excitement. This terrain is perfect for guerrilla tactics. We strike fast, hit them where they're weakest, then disappear. Voss agreed. If we stay mobile and use the land to our advantage, we can keep them off balance. But we'll need to organize the Theraxians quickly. They're risking their lives to resist the Skarn, and we need to be sure they're prepared. The Harbinger sat down in a secluded valley where the Council's forces awaited. It was a hidden sanctuary, shielded by towering cliffs and thick vegetation, rendering it nearly invisible from above. As the ship's ramp lowered, Voss and her team were greeted by a gathering of Theraxians, their faces marked by a quiet but fierce resolve. Lyra stepped forward, flanked by a few Theraxian elders and a group of younger recruits. She inclined her head in a gesture of respect, and Voss returned the gesture. "Welcome to our refuge," Lyra said, her voice filled with pride. "For centuries, this valley has been a place of peace, a sanctuary for our people. Today, it becomes a fortress." Voss smiled. "We'll make sure it stays that way." Under Voss's guidance, the crew began distributing weapons and conducting crash courses in combat training. Ghost worked with Theraxian scouts, demonstrating silent communication techniques, while Blaze taught tactics for ambushing and disorienting larger forces. The Theraxian recruits were quick learners, their desperation transforming into determination as they absorbed the knowledge. Voss saw the transformation in their eyes, a newfound readiness to stand their ground. Over the next few days, Voss and her team worked tirelessly, establishing supply routes, organizing communication lines, and creating a network of resistance cells. The Theraxians took to their new roles with zeal, and a sense of unity emerged between the species, a bond forged through shared purpose and adversity. One evening, as the team gathered around a campfire, Lyra approached Voss, her face thoughtful. "Commander, there's something I've been meaning to ask. Why would humans, a species we know so little of, risk so much for a world that is not their own?" Voss looked at her, considering the question. "There's a saying among our people: justice delayed is justice denied. We've had our own history of battles, losses, and hardship. When we saw what was happening here, we couldn't turn away." Lyra nodded slowly, her gaze distant. "There are not many in this galaxy willing to act without the promise of gain." Grimm spoke up, his deep voice laced with sincerity. "Sometimes fighting for someone else's home is the only way to defend our own. The Skarn don't just stop with one planet. We're here to make sure they understand there's always someone willing to stand against them." Lyra gave a small smile, one of respect. "Then we are fortunate to have you as allies." As dawn broke the next day, they received their first test. Skarn scouts had picked up traces of movement in the valley and were fast approaching. Voss quickly coordinated the Theraxian forces, positioning them along the natural defensive points they had trained for. When the Skarn arrived, they found a force unlike anything they had expected. Theraxian rebels emerged from hidden crevices, moving with agility through their familiar terrain, launching attacks before vanishing again. The humans, armed with advanced tech and precision, struck at the Skarn's weak points with brutal efficiency. The battle lasted well into the afternoon, with the Skarn unable to gain ground. Frustrated and disoriented, the Skarn forces retreated, leaving the rebels and their human allies victorious. As they regrouped, the Theraxians erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the valley. Voss looked around, a rare smile breaking across her face. She had seen people pushed to their limits, but this victory, won with courage, resilience, and sheer determination, was something special. But she knew the fight was far from over. This was a victory, yes, but the Skarn would not give up easily. They would send reinforcements, and the next battles would be even harder. The Theraxians were strong, but they were also new to the brutal realities of war. Voss turned to her team. "We've sent a message today, but we can't rest. The Skarn will come back stronger. We need to be ready to push back harder." Ghost nodded. "We've shown them we won't back down. Now we prepare for what's next." As they moved to reinforce their defenses and prepare for the battles to come, Voss couldn't shake a sense of pride in their progress. In a matter of days, they had transformed a vulnerable population into a defiant force, capable of defending their home. And as they stood on the edge of what was sure to be a fierce and grueling campaign, Voss felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was more than just a rescue mission. It was a fight for freedom, unity, and survival. The victory in the valley had stirred something in the Theraxians, a fierce desire to reclaim their world. As news of the successful defense spread, more Theraxians joined the resistance, drawn by stories of courage and hope. They looked to Commander Voss and her team not only as allies but as mentors, guiding them through their journey from a peaceful people to resilient defenders. Voss knew they were on borrowed time. The Skarn would respond, and when they did, it would be swift and merciless. The Skarn operated under a single brutal philosophy: conquer or destroy. Every victory the Theraxians achieved only spurred the Skarn to crush them even harder. Voss and her team worked tirelessly to train the new recruits, pushing the Theraxians to their limits, knowing they had to be ready for whatever came next. One evening, as the crew gathered to discuss strategy, a distress signal crackled over the comms. Ghost leaned forward, adjusting the frequency to clear the static. It was from a Theraxian scout stationed near the Skarn Central Command. "Commander," the scout's voice trembled with urgency, "we've spotted a massive Skarn fleet gathering just beyond the system's outer rim. They're amassing troops and heavy artillery, likely preparing for a full-scale assault. They mean to end this rebellion once and for all." Voss felt a chill run down her spine. This was it, the Skarn's final move. She looked around at her crew, and then at Counselor Lyra, who had been helping coordinate supplies and recruits. There was a somber understanding in their eyes. This was the moment they had all feared, but it was also the moment they had been preparing for. "Gather everyone," Voss ordered, her voice steady. "It's time to make a stand." The valley was abuzz with activity as every Theraxian who could fight armed themselves, took positions, and reinforced the natural defenses they had built. Voss and her crew helped place heavy artillery at strategic points, knowing they would need every advantage they could get to hold off the Skarn. Lyra walked among the fighters, offering words of encouragement, her presence a beacon of hope. Before the battle, Voss called everyone together. Theraxians, humans, and all who had joined their cause gathered in a circle around her. "I won't lie to you," she began, her voice carrying over the quiet crowd. "The Skarn are coming in force. They see our resistance as a threat and they'll do everything in their power to break it. But we're not fighting for power, or land, or conquest. We're fighting for our right to exist, to live in peace, and to choose our own fate. And that's something worth fighting for." The Theraxians murmured in agreement, and a ripple of determination passed through the crowd. Voss could see the resolve in their faces. Whatever happened next, they were ready. As dawn broke over the valley, the Skarn fleet appeared on the horizon, casting an ominous shadow across the sky. Massive warships, armed to the teeth, hovered above, while waves of Skarn soldiers descended upon the valley. The earth trembled with the force of their landing, and the Skarn army assembled, a terrifying force of raw power and brutality. Voss and her team took their positions on the front line, their weapons charged and ready. "Hold the line!" she shouted over the roar of the approaching Skarn. "They may have numbers, but we have something they don't: each other." The first wave of Skarn soldiers surged forward, but the Theraxians and humans met them with a barrage of coordinated fire. Under Blaze's command, sharpshooters picked off the Skarn's front lines, disrupting their momentum. Ghost moved silently through the ranks, using stealth tactics to disable key targets and sow confusion among the attackers. The battle was relentless. The Skarn pushed forward with a ferocity that was almost mechanical, their advanced technology and sheer numbers forcing the defenders to give ground inch by inch. But the Theraxians fought back with a newfound strength, standing shoulder to shoulder with the human warriors who had taught them the value of resilience. As the Skarn brought in heavier artillery, Voss made a quick decision. "We need to take out those warships," she said to her team. "Without air support, they'll be forced to engage us on the ground, where we have the advantage." She called over a group of Theraxian fighters and explained the plan. Together, they coordinated a daring strike, splitting into small teams and using the terrain to approach the Skarn warships undetected. Ghost led a team through the dense jungle, moving with precision to avoid detection. Meanwhile, Blaze coordinated a diversion, drawing Skarn fire away from the advancing teams. As they reached the warships, The teams worked quickly, planting explosives on the ship's engines and weapons systems. It was a dangerous mission, but each team moved with precision, driven by the shared determination to protect their home. With a deafening explosion, the first warship went down, crashing into the earth with a fiery blaze. The defenders cheered, their spirits lifted as they watched the Skarn's air advantage disintegrate. But there was no time to celebrate. The Skarn were furious, their attacks becoming even more brutal and unrestrained. Back in the valley, Voss rallied her forces. "This is it! Hold the line for Theraxis!" The defenders braced themselves as the Skarn charged once more, their relentless advance threatening to overwhelm the valley's defenses. But Voss and her team fought with everything they had, each one a pillar of strength for the others. The Theraxians, inspired by their human allies, fought with a tenacity that stunned even the Skarn. The battle raged for hours, with neither side willing to back down. The valley became a landscape of chaos and smoke, the air thick with the sounds of battle. But despite the overwhelming odds, the Theraxians held their ground, refusing to let the Skarn take what was theirs. At last, as the sun began to set, the Skarn forces wavered. Their commanders, seeing the destruction of their air support and the unbreakable spirit of the defenders, began to pull back. One by one, the Skarn soldiers retreated, leaving the valley in defeat. The defenders watched, exhausted but victorious, as the enemy forces disappeared over the horizon. A cheer erupted from the crowd, the sound echoing across the valley. They had done it. They had defended Theraxis against impossible odds. Voss looked around at her crew and the Theraxians, pride swelling in her chest. They had not only fought together but had forged a bond that would last a lifetime. As the adrenaline faded, Lyra approached Voss, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You have given us more than our home. You've given us the strength to fight for it ourselves. We are forever in your debt." Voss nodded, her face softening. "You don't owe us anything, counselor. This was as much your victory as ours." The Theraxians celebrated through the night, their once quiet valley filled with laughter and relief. The Skarn had been defeated, and for the first time in recent memory, the Theraxians could look forward to a future free from fear. As Voss and her crew prepared to leave, Counselor Lyra gathered the Theraxian people, presenting Voss with a crystalline emblem, a symbol of the gratitude and respect of the Theraxian people. "For generations to come, our people will remember the day the deadliest humans answered our call for help," Lyra said, her voice thick with emotion. Voss and her team boarded the Harbinger, watching the valley grow smaller in the distance. The mission was over, but the impact would be felt for years to come. They had not only saved a world, they had proven that even in the darkest times, hope, courage, and unity could turn the tide against any enemy. As they set course back to Earth, Voss knew that the story of Theraxis would be remembered, a testament to the resilience of the Theraxians and the unbreakable spirit of the humans who had stood by their side.